Welcome to the Granny Square series. This week we'll be making this lovely little square. It's a variation of this square from the wildflower blanket, but instead of using clusters, we're going to be using puff stitches. So for the square, this one I've used the Moonstone from the Stonewash range, and here I've used Stylecraft Special DK. I'll be using a 4mm hook. So let's get started. So I'm going to start with a double magic circle. You can use a chain 3 or 4 and slip stitch if you prefer, and chain 1. So we're going to make 12 stitches in this first round. We're going to be making US doubles, UK trebles. Yeah, so I'm going to just go in and make a US single, UK double, and then chain 1 for my first stitch. And then we're going to go round and make 11 more stitches. So I shall see you at the end of the round. You can press pause if you're making along. I'm just making stitch number 12 now. There we go, and you can count to check, and then we're going to pull our circle tight. And you can weave that in at the end, and then we're just going to slip stitch across into that first stitch. So it's the second stitch, but the first US double, UK treble. And that's the end of round 1. So for round 2, we're going to chain 1, and we're going to make a round of puff stitches. So we're going to just pull that chain up to the height of a US double, UK treble, and we're going to make 3 loop puff stitches. So we're going to yarn over, go in, pull the yarn through, and then pull up to height. So that's 1, yarn over, go in, pull through, that's 2, yarn over, go in, pull through, and that's 3 loops. Yeah, so we're then going to yarn over and pull through all 3 loops, chain 1, and then we're going to go across to the next stitch and repeat. So we make a 3 loop puff stitch, and then we chain 1 into each stitch. So at the end of the round, you will have 12 3 loop puff stitches and 12 chain 1 spaces. So you can press pause if you're making along, and I'll see you at the end of the round. So after your number 12 stitch, we chain 1, and we're going to slip stitch into the top of the first puff stitch. And then we're going to slip stitch into the chain space. And that's how it should look at the end of round 2. It's cute, isn't it? So round 3, we're going to chain 1. If you're using different colours, you could have cut the yarn and weave in and then change colour. Just slip stitch and chain 1. Yeah, we're going to make a US single, UK double, and then we're going to chain 2. Yeah, so that's into that chain space. We're going to skip the next puff stitch, skip the chain space, and we're going to work into the top of the next puff stitch. We're going to make a 2-stitch cluster using US doubles, UK trebles. So we start the first stitch, and then we start the second stitch, and then we finish them together. Yeah, we're going to chain 2, and then we're going to make a second 2-stitch cluster into the top of that puff stitch. Yeah, so this is our corner. Oops. Yep, and then chain 2. So we're going to skip the chain space, skip the puff stitch, and then working into the chain space, we're going to make a US single, UK double. So we make our little stitches into the chain space, and then we make our corners into the puff stitch. Yeah, so we're going to chain 2. We're going to skip the stitch, skip the chain space, and then into the top of the stitch we're going to make a 2-stitch cluster, chain 2, and a second 2-stitch cluster into that same space, chain 2, and then we skip the space, skip the stitch, and make a little stitch into the chain 1 space. And there you can see it's starting to look like a square. So you can carry on, press pause if you're making along, and I'll see you at the end of the round. So you should finish the round with a chain 2, and then we'll slip stitch into the first little stitch we made, and then we'll slip stitch into the chain 2 space. And that's how it should look at the end of round 3. And I think this is really cute, would be really nice if you were just wanting to use 3 round squares. You could attach them to each other on these chain 2 spaces. Wouldn't that look sweet? Round 4, we're going to chain 1. We're going to make a US single, UK double, and a chain 1. We're then going to make a US double, UK treble into that chain 2 space. And that's the start of the first granny group, if it were. So we're going to hop across to the next chain space, which will be our corner. And we're going to make 3 US doubles, UK trebles. It's basically a granny square round now. We're going to chain 2 or chain 1 if you prefer, and we're going to make 3 more stitches into the corner. Yeah, we're then going to hop across to the next chain 2 space and make 3 stitches. Oops. After 3 stitches, we hop across and we make 3 stitches in the next chain 2 space. When we get to the corner, we make 3 stitches, chain 2, 3 stitches. So we're going to go all the way around, and I'll see you at the end of the round and we'll finish up that last group together. Yeah, so you can press pause if you're making along. So when we've nearly finished the round, we'll have made 3 stitches, and then we're going to hop across and we're just going to make 1 more stitch into that first group. Yeah, and then from there we can slip stitch across. It'll be the third stitch in that group, but the second stitch we made. That slip stitch will create like a fake top on the starting stitch. I learned that little trick from Cypress Textiles. And there we go. That's the end of the square. Isn't it cute? That's one of my favourites. I'll see you in the next video.